the river of reconciliation. The sun hung high over the Arizona plains, scorching the earth until the grass shimmered like molten gold. Garrett McKinley rode his chestnut mare along the edge of his ranch, the leather of his saddle creaking with every step. At 35, he was a man carved by hard work, his hands calloused from years of roping cattle and mending fences. This land was his life, bought with sweat and blood, every acre a testament to his stubborn will. The river that cut through his property sparkled like a silver thread, its soft murmur a constant companion in the quiet wilderness. But today something was wrong. A figure sat motionless by the riverbank beneath the twisted limbs of a cottonwood tree. Garrett's jaw tightened. No one had any business on his land without his say-so. He spurred his horse forward, dust kicking up beneath its hooves. As he drew closer, he saw an old man Apache, by the look of him, with gray hair braided neatly and a walking stick propped against his knees. The man's weathered face held a quiet dignity, but to Garrett, he was just a trespasser. Stories from his childhood flooded back tales of Apache raids, stolen livestock families cut down in the night. His father's voice echoed in his head. Never trust an Indian, son. They'll take everything you've got if you let your guard down. Garrett dismounted 20 feet away, his boots hitting the ground with a thud. The old man didn't move, didn't even look up. "You're trespassing, old man." Garrett said, his voice sharp in the still air. "This is private property. Get moving." The Apache finally raised his eyes dark and deep, like they'd seen 100 years of sorrow. He nodded toward the river where clear water danced over smooth stones. "Water calls to all living things," he said, his English slow but clear. "I meant no harm." Garrett's temper flared. "I don't care what you meant. You can't just wander onto my land because you're thirsty. There's a town 5 miles east with a well. Use it." The old man sighed, gripping his walking stick as he struggled to stand. "I will walk," he said, his voice frail. His legs trembled, and for a moment it looked like he might collapse. Garrett watched, arms crossed, impatience gnawing at him. Part of him knew he should help, but pride held him back. Show kindness to one Apache, and soon the whole tribe would think they owned the place. "Make it quick," Garrett said, "and don't come back." But as the old man took his first shaky step, his walking stick caught on a root. He stumbled, crying out as he hit the ground hard. Garrett froze, staring at the crumpled figure. A thin line of blood trickled from a cut on the old man's forehead, and his breathing came in shallow gasps. For a moment, Garrett thought he was dead. His mind raced. A dead Apache on his land would bring trouble questions from the territorial authorities, maybe worse if the man had family. "Hey," Garrett called, his voice rougher than he meant. "Old man, you all right?" The Apache's eyes fluttered open, dazed. He tried to sit up, wincing as he clutched his side. "My ribs," he whispered. "Something's broken." Garrett cursed under his breath. This was exactly the kind of mess he'd wanted to avoid. He stepped closer, despite every instinct screaming to stay back. "Can you get up?" he asked, hating the concern creeping into his voice. The old man tried again, his face twisting in pain, but he couldn't manage it. Garrett scanned the horizon, half expecting riders to appear. The last thing he needed was someone finding him standing over an injured Apache with no witnesses to back his story. "Look," Garrett said, kneeling reluctantly. "I didn't push you? You fell on your own?" The old man's eyes met his steady despite the pain. "I know," he said. "You helped me to shade?" Garrett's gut churned. His father's warnings rang loud, but looking at the frail man, he couldn't ride away. He helped the Apache to his feet, supporting his weight as they shuffled to the cottonwood shade. The old man was light, his body fragile under Garrett's hands. "Water," the Apache whispered. Garrett grabbed his canteen, watching as the man drank slowly. Up close, he noticed the beadwork on the old man's vest, the careful braids in his hair. This wasn't some wandering drifter. There was history here, a life lived with purpose. "What's your name?" Garrett asked, surprising himself. "Joseph Red Hawk," the man replied softly. "And you are Garrett McKinley. This is your land." Garrett nodded, uneasy. "Good land. Good water." Joseph's eyes softened. "My grandfather hunted here long ago." The words hit Garrett like a punch. This wasn't random. It was something older, deeper than property lines. But before he could respond, Joseph said something that chilled him. "My son will wonder where I am. He worries when I wander too far." Your son Garrett's voice was barely a whisper. "Thomas Red Hawk," Joseph said, wincing as he shifted. "He leads our people now. When he cannot find me, he will come looking." Garrett's heart sank. Every rancher in Arizona knew Thomas Red Hawk, the Apache leader who'd negotiated peace treaties and tracked down rustlers without spilling blood. A man whose warriors would follow him to hell and back. "Thomas Red Hawk is your son." Garrett's voice cracked. Joseph nodded. "He is a good son, protective. When the sun sets and I have not returned, he will ride out with the young warriors." Garrett's mind spun. Having an injured Apache elder on his land was bad enough, but Thomas Red Hawk finding his father hurt here could mean war, or at least the end of everything he'd built. "I need to get you back to your people," he said, standing, "before anyone comes looking." But when Joseph tried to stand, he gasped and collapsed against the tree, his face pale sweat beading on his brow. "Cannot ride," he said. "Ribs may be lung." Garrett stared, panic rising. He couldn't move Joseph without killing him, but he couldn't leave him here. Then he heard it, the distant thunder of hooves, too many for casual riders, too disciplined for strangers. Joseph heard it too, his eyes meeting Garrett's with something like pity. "They come," he whispered. Garrett grabbed his rifle hand, shaking as he checked the chamber. 6 bullets against a war party. The odds were grim, but he'd go down fighting. The hoofbeats grew louder, and over the ridge came 8 Apache warriors, their horses dark silhouettes against the blazing sky. At their head rode a man who commanded the air itself, Thomas Red Hawk, his frame powerful, his eyes locked on his father. Garrett's finger tightened on the trigger, but Joseph's hand gripped his wrist with surprising strength. "No," the old man hissed. "If you point that weapon at my son, no words will save you." The riders slowed their horses, snorting. Thomas dismounted in one fluid motion, his eyes never leaving Joseph. "Father," he said in Apache, his voice cutting through the air. Joseph responded, gesturing weakly toward Garrett. The exchange was brief, calming. Thomas's gaze shifted to Garrett, studying him like a predator sizing up prey. When he spoke, his English was perfect, almost too polished. "You are on your land," Thomas said. "Yes, sir," Garrett replied, his voice small. "This is my property, and my father was trespassing." Thomas continued, not a question. Garrett nodded, unsure where this was going. Thomas stepped closer, and Garrett fought the urge to raise his rifle. The other warriors stayed mounted, hands near their weapons, watching. "Tell me what happened," Thomas said, his voice a command. Garrett stumbled through the story, the discovery by the river, the confrontation, the fall. Thomas's expression never changed, but Garrett felt the weight of judgment in those eyes. "You offered my father water," Thomas noted when Garrett finished. "Well, yes, he was hurt," Garrett said. "But first you told him to leave." Thomas said, the accusation sharp. Garrett's cheeks burned. He was trespassing. "I had a right." "You had a right," Thomas said, his voice low. "Just as I have rights." The threat hung heavy. Garrett glanced at the warriors counting knives, bows, rifles. If this turned ugly, he was done. But Joseph spoke again in Apache, his voice stronger. Thomas listened, his expression softening. "My father says you helped him when you could have ridden away," Thomas said. "He says you brought him water and shade when he was in pain." Garrett swallowed, unsure if this was good or bad. "He also says you were afraid," Thomas added. The truth stung. "Wouldn't you be?" Garrett asked, his voice raw. For the first time, something like respect flickered in Thomas's eyes. "Yes," Thomas said, "I would be." The moment stretched two men from different worlds measuring each other. Thomas knelt beside his father, speaking softly. "Can you ride?" he asked in English. Joseph shook his head. "Ribs may be broken." Thomas's jaw tightened as he checked Joseph's injuries. He looked back at Garrett, his eyes hard. "My father cannot be moved safely. He needs medical attention. He will remain here until he heals." Garrett's heart sank. For how long, he asked. Thomas's smile was cold. "As long as it takes." The sun beat down as the words sank in. Weeks with an Apache elder on his land would ruin him. Neighbors would talk, the law might poke around. "Wait a minute," Garrett started, but Thomas's look silenced him. "My father is injured on your land," Thomas said. "Apache law and white man's law both say you bear responsibility." "I didn't hurt him," Garrett said. "He fell." "Yes," Thomas said. "And yet here we are." Garrett saw no way out. Thomas Redhawk didn't back down. "Look," Garrett said, "I've got a ranch to run cattle to tend. I can't." "You will have help," Thomas cut in. "Two of my warriors will stay to care for my father. They will assist with your cattle." Garrett stared at the mounted warriors, imagining explaining them to his neighbors. "People will ask questions," he said. "They will think you are honoring a debt," Thomas said. "Which you are." Joseph spoke again, and Thomas's face softened. "My father reminds me you could have left him to die," Thomas said. "He believes there is honor in you despite your fear." "I'm not afraid," Garrett lied. Thomas's smile was sharp. "Yes, you are, and that is wise. Fear keeps men alive when courage fails." Joseph called out weakly, and Thomas knelt beside him, listening as the old man whispered in Apache. When Joseph finished, Thomas's face darkened. "He says the pain is worse," Thomas said, standing. "He fears internal bleeding. My father needs white man's medicine, or he may not survive the night." Garrett's stomach twisted. A dead Apache elder would bring hell down on him. "The nearest doctor's in town 15 miles away," he said. "And Morrison won't come for an Apache." Thomas's eyes locked onto his. "Then you will convince him," he said. "Because if my father dies here under your watch, the consequences will find you." Garrett stared into Thomas's eyes and made a choice that surprised him. "I'll get the doctor," he said, striding to his horse. Thomas studied him, then nodded. "Dr. Morrison will not come willingly," Thomas said. "He has strong feelings about my people." "Then I'll change his mind," Garrett said. "Take Swift Arrow with you," Thomas said, gesturing to a young warrior with war paint on his cheeks. "If Morrison refuses, perhaps seeing one of us will clarify his obligations." The warrior dismounted, his eyes sharp. "That might make things worse," Garrett said. "Or it might make them honest," Thomas replied. "Swift Arrow speaks English. He will know if Morrison lies." There was no time to argue. Joseph's breathing was labored, his face gray. Garrett and Swift Arrow rode hard toward town, their horses' hooves pounding the earth. The landscape blurred past dry grass, distant hills, the sun sinking low. Neither man spoke, but the stakes bound them. Town appeared as the sky turned orange. Garrett ignored the stares of townsfolk as they thundered down the main street, halting at Dr. Morrison's office. He burst through the door, Swift Arrow behind him. Morrison looked up from his desk, his face souring at the sight of the Apache. "McKinley, what in God's name I need you at my ranch?" Garrett said. "A man's dying." "What kind of man?" Morrison asked, eyeing Swift Arrow. "The kind that bleeds red." Garrett snapped. "Are you a doctor or not? I don't treat Indians," Morrison said. "You know that." Swift Arrow stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "The man dying is Joseph Redhawk, respected elder of our people. His son Thomas Redhawk leads warriors who never forget an insult." Morrison paled. "You're threatening me," he whispered. "I'm explaining consequences," Swift Arrow said. Garrett leaned in. "Doc, Joseph Redhawk is dying on my land. If he dies, Thomas will hold me responsible. And if he does, you're the only witness who could have saved him." Morrison swallowed. "I'll need my bag," he said, resigned. "Already in your buggy?" Swift Arrow said with a faint smile. Morrison blinked. "How did you—" "We've been watching," Swift Arrow said. "Thomas Redhawk leaves nothing to chance." The ride back was tense. Morrison sat rigid in his buggy, Swift Arrow riding beside them. When they reached the river, the Apache had built a shelter from branches and Garrett saddle blankets. Thomas knelt by his father, speaking softly. Morrison approached, clutching his bag. "I'll need to examine him," he said. Thomas nodded, speaking to Joseph in Apache. "He gives permission," Thomas said. Morrison worked carefully, his hands steady despite his unease. The warriors watched, silent but vigilant. "Two broken ribs," Morrison said after a tense examination. "One's punctured the lung, causing internal bleeding, but it's not fatal yet. He needs rest, pain medication, and monitoring. He should recover." Thomas's relief was palpable. "How long?" he asked. 2 weeks before he can travel," Morrison said. "A month's better." Thomas turned to Garrett. "You heard the doctor? My father stays here." Morrison packed up, eager to leave. "I'll check on him in 3 days," he said. "And if his condition worsens, you come immediately," Swift Arrow added. After Morrison left, silence settled. Garrett faced 8 Apache warriors on his land responsible for their elder's life. "Your warriors can't all stay," he said. "People will. Only 2 remain," Thomas said. "Swift Arrow and Running Bear will tend to my father and help with your ranch. The others return to our people." "And you?" Garrett asked. "I come and go," Thomas said. "My father's recovery is my responsibility." As the sun set, the other warriors mounted their horses, their departure as disciplined as their arrival. Thomas approached Garrett. "You surprised me today," he said. "How so?" Garrett asked. "You could have let fear rule you," Thomas said. "But you did what was right even when it was hard." Garrett flushed. "I did what anyone would." "No," Thomas said. "You did what a man of honor would do." Thomas rode off, leaving Garrett with Swift Arrow, Running Bear, and Joseph, who slept under the shelter, eased by Morrison's medicine. "This'll be interesting," Garrett muttered. Swift Arrow smiled. "More interesting than you know McKinley. My grandfather said the best lessons come from unexpected teachers." "What's that mean?" Garrett asked. But Swift Arrow was already tending the fire, leaving Garrett to wonder what lay ahead. 3 weeks passed, and the ranch became an unlikely community. Joseph grew stronger, sitting by the fire to share meals. Swift Arrow proved a skilled tracker, finding 6 stray cattle in a hidden canyon. Running Bear's weather sense saved the herd from 2 storms, moving them to high ground just in time. Garrett's distrust faded, replaced by respect. One evening, as the sky burned orange, Joseph spoke. "Your grandfather was a good man," he said. Garrett nearly choked on his coffee. "You knew my grandfather," Joseph nodded. "In the drought of '62, he let our people water their horses here. Asked for nothing, said water belonged to all living things." The words echoed Joseph's first words by the river. Garrett realized this wasn't chance, it was a pilgrimage. My father never told me, he said. Your father was young, scared by other stories, Joseph said. But your grandfather judged men by actions, not blood. Thomas arrived as he did most evenings. How are you, father? He asked. Strong enough to ride home, Joseph said, but not eager to leave good company. Thomas studied the camp, the shared fire, Swift Arrow, and Garrett planning a cattle drive, running Bear teaching Garrett to read clouds. Perhaps it's time to discuss the future, Thomas said. Garrett's stomach tightened. What kind of future, he asked. Thomas sat across from him. My people have watched the government's plans. Railroads, mines, settlements, they'll change everything. The old divisions won't serve us. We need allies who see cooperation over conflict. Swift Arrow looked up. Thomas offers a partnership, McKinley. A real one. What kind? Garrett asked. Your land borders our grazing territory, Thomas said. Your cattle could use our grass in dry months. Our horses could benefit from your breeding knowledge. Together we'd stand stronger against the railroad men. Garrett saw the wisdom in it. Alone he'd be easy prey for exploitation. With allies he'd be respected. People in town won't like it, he said. They'll adapt, Thomas said, or be left behind. Joseph stood his recovery nearly complete. My grandfather said a man's character is shown by how he treats those different from him, he said, looking at Garrett. You've shown yours these past weeks. Garrett felt the weight of the moment. If we do this, he said, we do it right. Equal partners, shared decisions, mutual respect. Thomas extended his hand. Equal partners, he said. Garrett shook it, feeling the strength of a man who worked as hard as any rancher. That night by the fire they planned, under a starlit sky. Joseph, now strong, prepared to leave. Before going, he handed Garrett a beaded bracelet. A token, he said, for friendship. Garrett looked at the river, once a source of conflict, now a symbol of reconciliation. As the Apache rode off, he wondered what other lessons this land held. The nightbirds called, and Garrett knew the best things came from unlikely meetings. Sometimes a stranger's challenge becomes the start of something greater for a cowboy who learned strength lies in opening your heart, even when fear says to close it. What would you have done in Garrett's boots? Share your thoughts and let us know if this river could change your course too.